is a special presentation of HBO Sports.
I can't believe this. I'm the HBO Sports host, and the ABC guy goes first? When did I get so generous?
No, I'm sorry, John. There's nothing I can do. They say they couldn't find you. Well, you're on that goofy bus all the time.
Why do I carry a Mickey Mantle baseball card with me? Don't you think all right-thinking Americans should have a religious artifact on their person at all times?
Brent, you can't wear that jacket.
Jim, it's my network uniform, the blazer.
No home uniforms on this one.
Hey, Pat, can you come on over and get off the phone? Sorry. Let me just talk to you fellas a minute.
Okay.
Now, look, first of all, Costas, we don't want any snide remarks about NBC losing baseball.
I'm trying to get over it.
Yeah, and Lampley, you're a real pro. What are you grumbling about where you are in the lineup? Now, look, this is like playing in an all-star game. We're all from separate teams, but we're in the game. We want to win it. So let's go out and have a great show. What do you say, huh? Go get it.
All right, let's go.
Okay, Cowboy.
All right.
Let's get them early.
Hey, Jim, how much you getting paid for this?
You're getting paid?
I'm going to call the play-by-play for you. It looks like a marvelous jump. As Jack Nicklaus finishes with 17 under par. We'll be back.
Speaking to you from our CBS Anchor Studio, ESPN. The biggest upset in the history of Little League.
Hello, I'm Jim McKay. The first television program I ever worked was a horse race from Pimlico on November 5th, 1947. It was, in fact, the first program ever televised in Baltimore. H.L. Mencken, the city's most gifted man of letters, was watching that day, and he wrote his opinion in his diary that night. Now, the diary wasn't made public until last year, and when it was, I was not really surprised that the famous iconoclast had buried the medium and me while we were still a-borning. He saw no serious future, he said, for the medium or, quote, for the young man who did the commentary. Well, 44 years later, TV sports is still going strong, and it even looks like I've found steady work. Televised sports, of course, today entertains us and influences our lives, sometimes for better, sometimes for worse, far more than we realize. This is the first of two shows, the first of two unprecedented hours telling the story of TV sports from the creation until now. All of the networks have joined with HBO to make this possible. And if you notice that anything's missing from this fascinating odyssey, it's because videotape didn't exist in the early years, and the old kinescope recordings have sometimes been lost or simply deteriorated beyond repair. Now, in this show, we'll cover the early days and the growth of TV sports through the years. We'll also recall some memorable mistakes and some of the funny things that have made it such a pleasant journey for those of us who have worked in it since it began. With inexorable logic, we now begin at the beginning with an old friend of mine and yours telling us a story. Storytelling, you know, is our business. Here's Kurt Gowdy.
When I was young, this was precious. Every single week. Can you imagine? You get all the baseball scores in the sporting news. Sure, we had radio, but we didn't get the major league games. The local station did local events. And that's how I got my start, covering a 6-man football game a few blocks from my house. It was cold that day. The vacant lot didn't have any yard lines, and when the players came out of a school bus, they didn't have any numbers on their backs. Well, I had to make up every name in the game. That night, the manager of the radio station called and told me, "Hey, you're a natural." Well, if I was a natural, it was only at improvising play-by-play. Right after World War II, radio was in a war of its own with television. Early on, people gathered in front of appliance store windows to get a peek at this new product that added pictures to the sound and cost a small fortune. So during the World Series, the people were 3 and 4 deep around any window with a TV set. And even back then, it looked like radio's days of dominance were numbered once television went on the air.
Have you ever seen television before?
No, it will be a new experience for us.
What do you think you will like seeing best of all?
Football.
Now you'll be able to see many sports as if you were really there.
The world little noted nor long remember the beginning. At 4 o'clock on a May 17th afternoon, 1939, an NBC experimental station transmitted live a Princeton-Columbia baseball game to about 400 homes.
My impression is that an awful lot of the ball players became hams for at least an hour or two, and there was a tendency for people to leave position and get in the line of flight of the camera.
There was only one camera that day, the only one NBC owned, and the first reviews were awful. The players looked shrunken, about an inch high, and the single camera coverage failed to capture anything other than bunt and infield plays.
I felt relatively famous under the circumstance. I was 19 at the time, and I felt I was a pioneer, but I didn't know in what.
2 weeks later, the first boxing match was televised. 20,000 viewers saw Lou Nova defeat Max Baer. In August, Pro Baseball and Red Barber made television debuts.
There were 2 cameras. I had no connection with the director in the truck outside. There was no monitor. The only way I knew what was being photographed, I didn't know what the picture would be, was to see the red light on one of the 2 cameras and see which one was on and which way the camera was focused.
In the early days, there was no sense of what was to come. Television was a commercial and artistic failure. Sets were a prohibitive $600. And as one viewer said, at least at the ballpark, you can see the ball. But after World War II, television exploded. There were 5,000 sets at the end of the war. In 5 years, there would be 10 million.
In the early days, when they first put TV sports on the air, the World Series, the Army-Navy game, Joe Louis fights, that put TV into the high speed of selling sets. In fact, they couldn't make enough sets at that point.
At first, owning a television set was a luxury, and many watched at a friend's home, or at a neighborhood bar, or clustered in front of a set placed in the window of the local appliance store. Early sports coverage was limited, the technology more suited to smaller confines. It was a situation that favored boxing and roller derby.
Girls will be good, and they're one of the reasons for 1950s roller derby mania.
And TV virtually created pro wrestling.
Bolo again.
And gave birth to its first star, Gorgeous George, a master of style over substance.
Now coming into view in our cameras is the gorgeous one himself, the toast of the coast, the human orchid himself, Gorgeous George. There he goes, another forward headstand 3. George rolls away, starts for the rope. A razzle-dazzle is set up. George does a reverse. Ooh, Millie, the man went out of the business.
When I first saw the first wrestling match, I said, hey, I can't play this straight. So I applied a lot of sound effects. You know, you've seen enough wrestling matches. The guy throws a wrestler through the air, and then the guy bounces back up. So when they're flying through the air, they're on camera. I'm not just... Now, the picture with the sound was tremendously effective. I did as much as I could to make this sporting event entertaining.
Broadcasters such as Dennis James were free to adopt their own methods, because in those early days, there were no rules. However, in the video age, radio-turned-television announcers had to make adjustments. A radio star before gaining fame in TV, Bill Stern could not rely on old tricks. A young Lindsey Nelson, once Stern's assistant, recalls that Stern, in his radio play-by-play, had no trouble altering facts to cover mistakes.
Bill Stern gave me explicit instructions on what would be expected of me as a spotter. And he said, now we are here to entertain and to inform, and just see that that's what you do. And if you have a man that is down about the 50-yard line and you've been calling him Smith and you discover that he progresses to about the 30-yard line, it isn't Smith at all, it's Brown, then you simply have him lateral. He laterals the ball over, and so then the lateral goes to Brown, and Brown goes in standing up. So that was the Bill Stern technique of broadcasting football games.
The 1947 World Series was the first to be televised. It was significant, too, as radio's last stand. Radio rights were 3 times the cost of TV rights. But it's the radio calls by Red Barber that we remember.
The pinch hit by Harry Lavagetto that deprived Bill Bevins, with only 1 out left, of not only a no-hit game in the World Series, but of the game itself.
No hits by Bevins, 8 2/3 innings. Gianfredo walks off second. Mixes off first. They're both ready to go on anything. 2 men out, last of the 9th. The pitch swung on. There's a drive back for the right field corner. Henrik is going back. He can't get it. It's off the wall for a base hit. Here comes the tying run, and here comes the winning run.
And then the other was John Friedo's catch of DiMaggio's bid for a home run 2 games later.
Outfield deep, round toward left, the infield overshifted. Here's the pitch. Swung on, belted. It's a long one. Deep in left center. Back for Gianfredo. Back. Back. He makes a one-handed catch against the bullpen. Oh, doctor. Those two have been heard so often. In fact, I listened to them and I said, gee whiz, did I say that? More about baseball in just a minute, folks. You know, World Series time is anti-freeze time, too. And right now is the time to make
Back
sure
in the black and white era, announcers often did the play-by-play and the pour-by-pour.
Pabst Blue Ribbon, finest beer served anywhere. Yowza, yowza.
That's what I want in a cigarette. And I have an idea that's what you want too.
The commercials were live. They were not taped as they are now. For example, beer was a big sponsor. And I knew when the sponsor came to write against your name, what he wanted to hear was not who won or lost the game, but how you pour the beer. And I had a real difficult job in getting my arms set for that perfect pour. They actually sent me to spring training so I could pour the beer right.
The Gillette Cavalcade of Sports is on the air.
The first company to truly understand the business potential of sports TV advertising was Gillette.
To look sharp and feel sharp too. Choose
Sports and TV were headed for a perfect marriage.
From the nation's great sports arenas, television cameras are trained to give you front row seats right at the ringside. Make these great sport events occasions for television parties. By television, you're the referee as the leather pushes meet in the squared circle.
By 1956, about 72% of homes in the U.S. had television. And when Don Larson was on his way to a perfect game in the 1956 World Series, the NBC camera crew at Yankee Stadium needed reminding that they were not only history's bystanders, but an integral part of it.
All of a sudden, I looked behind me in the control room, and every executive in the company was standing behind me with a drained look on their face. And the biggest problem I was having was my cameramen. They were getting mesmerized with Larson. Every time I looked up, every camera was on Larson. And it finally happened, and you couldn't believe it.
Yankee Stadium shivering in its concrete foundation right now. But this ball game is right there on your screen, Mr. Don Larson. And now there is one strike left. Got it! The greatest game ever pitched in baseball history by Don Larson. A no-hitter, a perfect game in a World Series, retiring 27 Dodgers in a row. The most dramatic baseball game ever played.
It was tough. It was the toughest show I ever did because it got to the crew.
Baseball was able to survive early TV overexposure, but boxing was another matter. By the end of the 50s, TV led to the rapid closing of 250 of 300 big fight clubs.
So remember, mark every Wednesday night on your calendar for exciting fights on television.
At first, pro football lagged behind boxing and baseball. The 1951 Chicago Bears actually had to pay some stations to carry their games.
I think it's rather fascinating that in the year 1956, I appeared on a show called What's My Line. I was the mystery guest. And the panel didn't even have to wear a mask. And that would be like Joe Montana going on a television show without a mask and people having a problem identifying him.
But that was before December 28, 1958, and a football game with everything. Johnny Unitas, a team from the largest TV market. The first NFL title game played to overtime and 30 million watching.
Unitas to Amici. Amici powers in. The Colts win it. They're the NFL champions.
As I joined the Giants in '52, and people would ask you, what do you do? I'd say, well, I'm the Giant announcer. And they'd say, oh, the baseball Giants. I'd say, no, football. So after that '58 sudden death game, you didn't any longer have to explain to people. When you said you were the Giant announcer, they knew exactly it was professional football.
As more households bought sets, Frank Gifford and Chris Schenkel were now among a growing group of household names.
Welcoming you, and your Renault dealer will give you this free gift just for coming in to see the new 60s. A bottle of My Sin perfume by Lanvin for your wife or girlfriend.
Thank you, Fragrant Frank.
In these early days, television was more innocent. The black and white picture a symbol of simplicity. The sets were plain, the presentations casual. For those of us at the beginning, the color and wonder of those times remains fresh in our memories.
It's a homer, look at that ball go. Here comes Joe DiMaggio.
Pro football's place in our Sunday afternoon TV screens was guaranteed after the 1958 NFL Championship. But NBC almost missed the critical play, Alan Amici's winning touchdown in overtime, because fans had accidentally pulled apart a cable in the final minutes. As NBC went to a commercial and tried to restore its signal, there was suddenly further confusion. A spectator was stumbling around in the center of the field, apparently drunk. That additional delay allowed NBC to fix the torn cable, and the game's historic moment, Amici's plunge, was captured live. As for the stumbling fan, well, he reported to work the next day a hero. He wasn't only a convincing drunk, he was also the most valuable business manager that NBC ever had. Those of my generation trained in radio now watched a new influx of talent raised on television. Among them was a gifted young man who began his rapid rise in St. Louis, Missouri, Bob Costas.
Kurt, once upon a time, a network sports department was a tiny office with a few desks and just a handful of very dedicated people. Until 1961, in fact, ABC really didn't even have a sports department. But as Eisenhower gave way to Kennedy, it seemed the country was possessed by a new vitality and bigger ambitions. ABC introduced Wide World of Sports, and we went places we'd never heard of to watch sports some of us didn't even know anything about. NBC, with the baseball game of the week, showed it had the right touch for the national pastime's subtle rhythms. And CBS captured the bruising and compelling action of NFL football on Sunday afternoons. As rockets lifted into space and rock music lifted many eyebrows, sports television came into its own. Everyone was extending their reach and expanding the lineup.
I'm Jim McKay at Franklin Field in Philadelphia for the 67th annual Penn Relay Carnival on ABC's Wide World of Sports.
Those were the inaugural words heard April 29, 1961, of a summer replacement series that became the longest-running anthology show in sports TV.
I wanted a credo. I wanted something that set Wide World of Sports apart.
We were up in the studio, and Roone and I were sitting together and wrote out some words.
Spanning the globe.
Spanning the globe. That's what we do.
Paris in the spring is everything you've ever heard it to be. This is Alaska, where the caribou lope across the endless snow. I am going to try to hit a golf ball over the Great Wall of China.
To bring you the constant variety of sport.
Constant variety was a thing that I just, I finally did it because I couldn't think of anything else.
The fellow on the right is nicknamed Orange Juice because he had to give up drinking scotches.
Say, that's not a bad little snake, is he?
The thrill of victory.
That's it, it's all over. The biggest upset in the history of Little League. We won it, we won it. You won it, the Dudley Derby.
The agony of defeat.
There was a lot of thought that went into whether you'd call it the agony of defeat, for example, whether that made winning too important.
A lot of speed in that track. Now, look at him go! Oh, oh, baby.
And then perhaps the most important line is the human drama of athletic competition. The most important thing in a sporting event is the human being.
Ali now taking advantage as Foreman's head was bent. Foreman down. This is almost incredible.
The mind and heart of Julie Moss would not give in. If she couldn't walk, she would crawl, finishing the course.
Getting to know and care about the athletes, seeing behind their highs and lows, this was Wide World's vision, setting a standard for the whole industry.
One of the year's foremost fashion statements isn't from Chanel, Klein, or Gucci, but instead from the fastest woman in the world.
In the morning and at night, during the day, the whole time, I get to see my family.
You know, I enjoy sex as much as Joe Namath. Only I do it with one girl.
From the personal to the pageantry, every fall TV sports follows the tradition and emotion of college football.
Look at the moves by that sensational player. He is going, gone.
Penn State, ranked #1 in the nation. Alabama, ranked #2. Everything could be hanging on 4th and goal with a half a yard. Goodman. He didn't make it.
Look at that cut. O.J. Simpson. That's all she wrote.
This is for the national championship for Nebraska.
The 1958 NFL championship game was the league's first hit show, and 33-year-old Commissioner Pete Rozelle maintained the momentum.
He was a PR man. He understood selling. He understood marketing. And more than that, he understood how television worked.
As Rozelle knew the value of TV, CBS knew football's potential. In 1956, before anyone else, CBS reserved fall Sunday afternoons for the NFL.
Got away from Adderley. It is indeed cold in Green Bay.
December 31st, 1967, 13 below, the day that symbolized the Packers. And fortunately for CBS, its cameras were frozen.
We generally agreed, all of us, that it was going to be some kind of a rollout. So Tony Verna, who was directing, said to Herman Lang, who was on the end zone camera, be ready for the rollout. And when he tried to move the camera so he could do that, the cables and the camera were frozen. So he was stuck right on the center, and Jethro Pugh and the great block that really made Jerry Kramer famous.
In 1970, the NFL swallowed the AFL and looked to extend America's weekend. CBS and NBC said no thanks to Monday nights, but ABC's Arledge said yes. And when football came to prime time, the emphasis of ABC's extravagant production was more than sports. It was entertainment. It was showbiz. ABC had more hardware than anyone else and more announcers, 3 of them, including TV's most provocative talent.
Hello again, everyone. I'm Howard Cosell. Welcome to another Monday night of NFL football.
What you've seen tonight, ladies and gentlemen, is a truly great football player. Take total personal command of a game.
Howard would add the real journalism that he did, but he would, when he'd get carried away, Don would always puncture his balloon, and people at home loved that.
I didn't know you cared.
Yeah.
Are you ready for some football?
ABC had altered America's Autumn Mondays. Bowling leagues were rescheduled. Crime was down. Even legends caught Monday Night Fever.
There goes Bo, and nobody catches Bo.
The incomparable Burt Reynolds.
There were curiosities on the field and off it.
I looked around, and there was Ronald Reagan with his arm around John Lennon and explaining American football to John Lennon. And I thought to myself, and this is really what maybe Monday Night Football is all about.
Monday Night Football changed viewing habits, but 9 of the 10 most watched programs in TV history came on Sunday, Super Bowl Sunday.
And he may go. He's in there. Still scoring.
The blitz is on for Dallas. The Steelers pick it up. Lynn Swan out there. Caught it. What a catch by Lynn Swan.
Montana
The first Super Bowl in 1967 didn't sell out, but it was jointly televised by NBC and CBS. The co-broadcast was a train wreck waiting to happen. At the second half kickoff, CBS was live, but NBC was in commercial.
They kicked off too early. Somebody running around screaming. I could hear him in my earphone about, hold up, hold up, hold up down there.
I didn't know what was going on. I remember they kicked off, and I turned around to look at something else, and I looked back, and they were lined up. I didn't know what had happened.
What happened next demonstrated TV's power. For tardy NBC, a second kickoff. And then, my friends, there are the studio shows. Coming up in the next half hour, Bill McAtee on the new look Pittsburgh Steelers.
Hello, everyone. I'm Jack Drees, and here's a roundup of the football scores from around the country.
Number 1 in UPI is Penn State.
We've got another barn burner going on at Pauley Pavilion.
All that and more coming up on the NFL Today.
In 1975, the NFL Today on CBS charted an ambitious new course for studio shows. The cast had an ex-sports writer, an ex-jock, and an ex-Miss America.
We were the mod squad of television sports back then. We had the black, the woman, Brent, and then we had the Greek. And I think it was popular because there was great chemistry between all of us.
Keep on smiling, Phyllis. You're much prettier than Brent or Earl.
Phyllis, you are absolutely right. It is the age of Star Wars in professional football. What in the world is that?
The prevailing production principle was achieving the right blend of features, updates, analysis, and humor.
Detroit job, he didn't get it. He will try to kick, you know what, out of Detroit.
All right. You turn, you fire the football, you say, rocket! Rocket!
Larry Bird. That almost his own shot. Oh, what a play.
The dazzling play of a few shining stars helped bring the NBA into its own on television.
Jordan. Oh, a spectacular move. Kareem Abdul-Jabbar has given the Los Angeles Lakers a victory.
I remember my dad used to say, Curtis, someday we're going to Chicago or St. Louis and we're going to watch a Major League Baseball game.
Robinson kind of shaking up the ballpark a bit as he dances down off third. Robbie's coming to the plate. The throw to Berra. He steals it.
In the 20th century's first half, big league baseball for many was at a distance, played mostly in the Northeast. Starting in 1947, NBC offered everyone a ticket.
In the early days, your aim was just to stay on the air. You'd set up emergency procedures on how to cover a baseball game with 3 cameras, with 2 cameras and 1. Because, you know, in a single baseball game, you'd be down to 1 at a certain time and 2 at others.
Stand by 8. Take 8.
Harry Coyle began by lugging cable. He would become baseball's finest director, a central figure in NBC's definitive coverage of the national pastime.
Stay with him all the way around. Take 5. Stand by 1. Take 1.
At the 1988 World Series, intuition and preparation paid off for Coyle and NBC.
There's Gibson.
We made a situation and put in a procedure that we were to shoot every movement that he did. We certainly turned out to be very lucky, but it was planned.
And he walked it. And look who's coming up. The game right now is at the plate. High fly ball into right field. She is gone.
CBS Sports presents The Masters.
Arnold Palmer is the Masters champion of 1960.
Since 1958, the Masters has been the prize jewel of CBS.
By a man accustomed to performing the incredible. How's that look?
ESPN, the Total Sports Network.
College kids look at me and say, you mean you didn't have ESPN when you were in college? What did you do?
Welcome, everyone, to the ESPN Sports Center.
In 1979, the lineup expanded to fit any sports fanatic's appetite with the birth of ESPN.
Side spin, swinging that racket.
From China's national game to the body bouncing of Australian rules football, ESPN tried just about anything to find its niche in sports TV.
I was asked more than twice Oh, on the Spanish network, Espanol, ESPN. No hablo, no, we're the sports network. Oh, no, the Spanish station, I watch it all the time.
5 seconds. Inside. He scores!
With a bounty of college basketball and Sports Center. With live NFL draft coverage.
National Football League draft.
And with historic America's Cup broadcasts, ESPN rapidly upgraded. And in 1987, it reached full TV adulthood.
This is a very big night here at ESPN as we welcome the National Football League to cable television for the very first time.
I didn't believe myself when I was saying it. We threw to this game, and my goodness, it was indeed the Chicago Bears and the Miami Dolphins. Not facsimiles thereof, but the actual teams. And I went, my goodness, look what we've done.
TV spread a malady that was once confined to college campuses. It was known as March Madness.
Well, let me tell you what we plan to show you tonight.
Into Walton. He can't score. Cernovich. Myers. Fumate. It's all over.
Smart takes the shot, and the Hoosiers with 3 seconds go ahead. Wittenberg, oh, it's a long ways. They won it.
There's nothing that I can think of where the impact of television has been as great as the Olympics.
The hockey game between Sweden and Germany. For
yes,
fifth place
CBS's
in the
Walter
Olympic
Cronkite hosted the first televised Olympics, the 1960 Winter Games in Squaw Valley.
So these
Later that year, the Summer Olympics from Rome were hosted in a New York studio by McKay, then with CBS.
Videotape of today's great race has just arrived at Idlewild Airport here in New York. Let's try to switch now to our mobile unit at Idlewild.
The rights fee, $400,000 for Rome 1960, is $400 million for Barcelona 92. TV made it happen by making the games a primetime winner.
It's Wilma Rudolph leading all the way. Jutta Hyman moving into second place.
So Bruce Skinner has kicked the world record in the decathlon sideways.
Bernard Lucy sitting at the bottom of first place. Oh. Harper almost went down, Frank.
Yes. She has done the best vault of her life.
And to make sense of it all, the TV hosts, the storytellers.
What I've tried to do is to always tell a story. It's very much like a play, except that this is a play that writes itself.
In this play, a young runner's mistake lingers for all time. On this stage, a young man who defies cancer and wins gold becomes an international symbol of hope. And could Shakespeare give us a better story than the diver who doesn't let a brush with mortality extinguish his will to win? The Olympics, singular in their grandeur, provoke extraordinary performances from those competing and from those who broadcast it to you. TV, as in the case of the Olympics, hasn't just popularized events, but virtually financed them. And its influence is deep and continuing. New York police, for example, reported that after Monday Night Football first came on the air, arrests dropped 16% on Monday nights. And 3 years ago, inmates at an Idaho prison were so upset by rotten Super Bowl reception, they threatened to riot unless allowed to dig a trench and repair the cable. But with forever spiraling rights fees now seemingly out of control and oversaturation of the TV sports market an undeniable fact, we're left to wonder, is TV's impact always beneficial? Whatever world follows, sports broadcasting is now an integral part of America's daily diary. And one of its distinctive voices is a contemporary of mine, Jim Lampley.
A broadcaster is in a position of unusual responsibility, a responsibility that cannot be casually dismissed. You're expected to maintain the highest levels of professionalism, to act with integrity, to observe the public trust, to keep the airwaves sacred. For to do otherwise, to abuse the special relationship between the broadcaster and the viewer, is to put yourself way, way out of bounds.
It's Thanksgiving morning, 1985. Ahmad is in Detroit for the traditional Thanksgiving game.
Bobby, I got something I want you to do for me.
Now, I suspect that something is going on, but I'm not 100% sure.
There's a lady that I'm in love with, and you know the lady as Claire Huxtable on The Cosby Show.
And literally, I saw the guy begin to sweat like Albert Brooks in broadcast news. I mean, it was pouring down. He was drenched.
Now, this is in all serious now. I would like to send this message to her. Felicia, would you marry me? Would you get back to me, Bobby, on that answer?
People were handing him Kleenexes from the wings, and he was patting at his face, and I recall a little clump of the Kleenex stuck on his chin. You know, he really looked like a man floundering. And she was working the Macy's Thanksgiving Day Parade for NBC. We went out and found her, brought her back in at halftime.
You'll be happy to learn that Felicia Ayres Allen, Claire Huxtable of The Cosby Show, is ready with her answer. Felicia?
Yes.
Yes?
Yes.
I'm cool.
I feel like some sort of cross between Chuck Woolery and Bob Eubanks.
I guess in my best Dick Enberg impression, oh my.
And there he stands, all aflame, waiting, still waiting. Why doesn't he go?
1981 champion, Jerry Payton.
Girls play a nice game of tennis for girls. But when they get out there on a court with the man, even a tired old man of 55, they're going to be in big trouble.
We had rehearsed and rehearsed and rehearsed, and as our procedure is when we start a game, I talk a little bit, and then Madden answers a question that I ask him, and then I talk some more. And then while he is answering my second question, I get up and get ready to start the broadcast. With the audience that we had, I turned around and started to put on my headset, and he's sitting on it. And at that time, he weighed a lot more than he weighs now. And I'm tugging on the cord, and he's talking about what he thinks about the game, and I can't get to my headset because he's sitting on it.
He knows what he has to do, and he's gotten that across to his team.
How can I be interested in football? My hair looks like this.
Well, lots of men have hair problems. The cold weather really dries out your hair.
And the hot indoors makes your hair here hard to manage too, doesn't it?
You've got to be kidding.
It'll be a long day. That was the General Robert Montgomery night. Everybody's ready to go. He's ready to go. I'm ready to go. And you're ready to go.
You're looking at George Foreman, the former heavyweight champion of the world, who today will be fighting not one, but 5 different fighters, scheduled for 3 rounds apiece.
But I don't believe he's going to whoop 5 men tonight.
And I don't think you believe he's fighting 5 good fighters either. So let's hit it
They're not the
12.
greatest, but 5 men can add up.
ABC had hired Muhammad Ali to offer analysis, but Ali abandoned the role and created chaos by mercilessly taunting Foreman.
Lay on the rope! Lay on the rope! Come up! On the rope! Hold on! Come up!
There he goes, down again, 3rd time down. This is an absurd scene. And Ali's presence here has to have something to do with it. I told you this is the weirdest occasion you'll ever want to see. Look at that. That's hardly professional, is it? And so this afternoon cannot have a wholesome aspect in George Foreman's boxing career. So all in all, it was a down day for boxing. It was a charade, a carnival, not boxing.
That's not Frank. That's not Frank. That is an imposter. Get him off the track. This happens in Bush League marathons.
We
This doesn't
can't
happen
find
in
a
an
number
Olympic
72.
marathon.
This looks like a fake in the Olympic Games. They ought to throw him out.
I wonder what Frank is thinking if he sees that guy up ahead. Look at his face. He looks worried. He's looking at the guy. Frank, it's a fake, Frank.
Directors will do anything for better camera angles, trimming tree branches at golf tournaments if necessary. The same director might also exaggerate the cost to pad an expense account. But Joe Assetti told the tallest tale, seeking reimbursement for eliminating a forest that never was.
I was at the end of my string of coming up with creative ways to make it look like I'd spent money legally on this trip. So I put in for trimming branches $150 or something like that. The business manager, when he saw it, said, hey, I got you. There's a pan of the course, and there's nothing on that course. There's no shrubs, there's no trees, there's nothing over 2 inches tall on the course other than grass. And I told him, well, what are you complaining about? For $150, he did a great job.
The lights,
the party's over. They say that all good things must end.
Howdy, fans. Peter Buck here to lay some facts on you about hockey, the world's fastest team sport.
The first time NBC gave us the silent treatment was the last time. Executive producer Don Ohlmeyer hatched the idea when faced with a lackluster late-season game.
And so Ohlmeyer said, well, let's try something different to attract attention to the game, and indeed it worked. He decided to have a game where there were no announcers.
We have just completed from the Orange Bowl, to the best of our knowledge, the only half of NFL football ever to be done without the benefit of announcers. If you find yourselves wondering what's been going on, then maybe we have to work out the kinks.
Boom, we cross him. The left goes to right goes to left. This guy crosses here, he crosses here. They have no idea where we are, who we are, where we're coming from, or who we're throwing to.
It scares me, but I understand it completely.
Hello.
Hello.
Negroes?
Yes, sir.
This is Ronald Reagan.
How you doing?
Well, I don't know. I'll tell you. I've had as much trouble getting this line, or a lot. I think I had to wait longer than you did to break the record.
Well, we were going to give you 5 more minutes, and that was it.
Here they come. Waltrip trying to slingshot.
It is right now a 3-country race.
Whatever the race, a broadcaster's worst nightmare is calling the wrong winner.
It did happen to me, and it happened in front of 85 million people.
It was at the 1988 Summer Olympics.
One of the classic finals in the Olympics, men's 800 meters. All eyes drawn to Saeed Ouida.
Cruz looks strong. Here comes Ouida and Kipretich.
Kipretich takes the lead. Ouida will not catch him. Nixon Kipretich. With Joaquin Cruz coming in second.
I did not discover it until they had the replay of the event, and then we knew, and then I knew that I had made the all-time world blooper reel.
But Kipretich pushes through. Cruz dies. It was great tactics by the Brazilians.
We have blown this call. Gentlemen, we were wrong. That is Paul Airey of Kenya. We made the mistake of the Olympic game. My mistake, nobody else's.
There have been others who've made big mistakes at big events. Clem McCarthy, considered the finest horse racing broadcaster of his day, botched the 1947 Preakness. McCarthy called Jet Pilot the winner, but ironically, first across the finish line was a horse named Faultless. Later, McCarthy met up with Bill Stern, a broadcaster given to invention, as we saw earlier. If Stern realized he had the wrong running back carrying the ball, he'd fabricate a lateral to the player who had the ball all along. When Stern ribbed McCarthy about his horse race call mistake, McCarthy was ready. Well, Bill, he said, you can't lateral a horse. From our review of less than great moments, we move now to the enduring events, the ones forever stored in our national memory, and a broadcaster who has stylishly given America his eyewitness account of more than a few compelling moments, Brent Musburger.
Jim, the compelling moments in sports television, these are the images you remember with such clarity so completely, it's almost as if they happened a day ago. These are the chosen few sporting events that we all share, frames of unequaled action that still sustain us, like that night in Atlanta, early in the baseball season, when a quiet man of so much dignity and such professional consistency did the Babe one better.
Balls it deep, deep. It is good. He did it. He did it. Henry Aaron is the all-time home run leader now.
And then there was the self-made genius of self-promotion who suspended boxing laws temporarily and turned a brutal sport into a ballet.
It's over. Muhammad Ali, with an 8th-round knockout, recaptures the heavyweight championship of the world, the second in history to do it.
And there was the February at Lake Placid, when all the world's skeptics were briefly silenced because of a team that defied reason.
5 seconds left in the game. Do you believe in miracles? Yes! Unbelievable.
Chills and thrills. We've been favored with so many in 50 years of sports television history.
touchdown. Caught by Boston College. I don't believe it. It's a touchdown. The Eagles win it.
Namath has not been bashful this week. He's come down here to Miami, and he has said that the Jets are going to win. He doesn't even predict it. He said, I guarantee a Jet victory. Namath firing. A great grab by Sauer. I knew as the game wore on, I was sitting in on history, that this was going to change the entire future and structure of pro football. The Jets beating the Baltimore Colts 16-7 gives the AFL the first Super Bowl championship.
Sam, we've got a trophy dash to the finish line. I've never seen anything like it. There's time to catch him if he can do it. No one has ever seen this before in Indianapolis. Can he make a move at the finish? He's making a move. No, not quite. Gordon Johnson has won the Indianapolis 500. He won it by less than a car length.
You had the greatest heroic moment possibly in the history of baseball. What'll it do to you, Bobby?
Oh, I don't know, Howard. I'm glad it happened. It was a lot of fun that day.
I'd like to win out to his one. Bracker throws. There's a left back. And Bobby, I believe. The Giants won the pennant. The Giants won the pennant. The Giants won the pennant. The Giants won the pennant.
Of course, it kind of put me up on a pinnacle, you might say, and I'm afraid I wasn't able to stay there due to the fact that I didn't have the ability to stay there.
Here's Lowe with a minute to go in the game. Lowe cleared to the blue line, held in by Duchesne. Duchesne's pass in deep to Taylor. The Gretzky scores! He's done it! Wayne Gretzky, the great one, has become the greatest of them all. The leading scorer in the history of the National Hockey League.
Secretariat has opened a 22-length lead. He is going to be the Triple Crown winner. Here comes Secretariat to the wire. An unbelievable, an amazing performance. He hits the finish 25 lengths in front.
A full count on Mookie Wilson. He can win it with a hit. Ray Knight's at second base. Here's the pitch to Mookie Wilson. Winning run at second. Ground ball to first. It is a run, an error. An error by Buckner. The winning run stalls. The Mets win it 6-5 with 3 in the 10th.
And it's a fair start. And it is Raymond Kerr with a start. It is Ben Johnson with a start. Can Kerr catch him? No! It's Ben Johnson. Ben Johnson does it again. Unbelievable. 9-7-9.
Don Landry is 6 yards away from his 6th Super Bowl.
And they tell me I had this look in my eyes, this crazed look. My God, they're going in. I don't believe it. They're going in.
And of course, for the upstart 49ers, they're 6 yards away from Pontiac. 3rd and 3. Montana looking, throwing in the end zone.
He gets it out deep, and Havlicek steals it. Over to Stan Jones. Havlicek stole the ball. It's all over. It's all over.
This could be the highlight of the compulsory event. She is one of the technically strongest gymnasts that I've ever seen. Oh, look at that amplitude. Ooh. Really moving well. Another handstand. Look at that. Right to the handstand.
He's tying a 63-yard field goal. He'll set a National Football League record in addition to winning the game. I don't believe this.
It's good! I don't believe it! The field goal attempt was good from 63 yards away! It's incredible!
What an uppercut by Douglas, and down goes Tyson. It's over. It's over.
Mike Tyson has been knocked out.
Unbelievable.
Let's go ahead and call it the biggest upset in the history of heavyweight championship fights. Say it now, gentlemen. James Buster Douglas, undisputed heavyweight champion of the world.
This has been one of the more incredible evenings in the history of championship play in the NBA. Won't start until it's much. They'll have to throw it up. Garherd, turnaround shot in the air. It's tied again. I don't believe it. Garfield Hurd at the buzzer. Threw one in outside. We got a third overtime in a Boston gun.
A 2-1 pitch. There's a fly ball out to the left. Waiting is Jones. The Mets are the world champions. Gary Koosman being mobbed. Look at this scene.
Greg LeMond prepares to start the race. Quite simply, he must go faster than most think he can. Time is 27:47. The magic time is gone. And that means the yellow jersey for Lawrence Bignon has been lost. Greg LeMond won in the smallest margin ever recorded in this race, 8 seconds.
Lawrence Taylor, number 56, right there. Carson is number 53. But it's Taylor over Carson, slamming, and you see the right knee, the right foot, and I don't believe Lawrence Taylor would have reacted that way unless Theismann is really hurt.
Candy Maldonado with the hesitation, allowing Jose Canseco to score. So the Oakland A's take.
Tell you what, we're having an early. Well, folks, that's the greatest open in the history of television, bar none.
In a way, I felt like the captain of a ship. I mean, it was up to me to communicate to people what I could see, what I knew was taking place.
You're looking now at a shot of the cantilever section of the Bay Bridge. That apparently is where the major damage has been done.
I remember thinking, don't overstate anything.
Everybody is exhaling.
Make sure you got your facts correct.
All I can say is that very, very fortunately for some 60,000 people at Candlestick Park, the epicenter was not that close to the ballpark.
This would be one of the greatest upsets in the history of championship games of the NCAA tournament.
Broadnax and a quick timeout after the field goal.
That's it. There will be no dynasty. Villanova has done it.
Under number 10, Hennick. To Canelli. Here's Canelli with Nystrom. The pass to Nystrom.
One unfortunate day, I had the biggest news story in the world. All this, scenes of what happened yesterday at the Olympic Games in Munich.
I remember telling him before a commercial, but I really confirmed it just as he said it.
We've just gotten the final word. You know, when I was a kid, my father used to say, our greatest hopes and our worst fears are seldom realized. Our worst fears have been realized tonight. They've now said that there were 11 hostages. 2 were killed in their rooms yesterday morning. 9 were killed at the airport tonight. They're all gone.
Those of us in sports television know we travel without a map on a road that turns without notice. Munich came without warning, but then it's almost always that way in our business. We're all accidental tourists, tested but always enticed by the utter unpredictability of the events we cover. This all began for me while I was still playing football for the New York Giants, and it was very accidental. CBS Radio was calling my roommate, Giant quarterback Charlie Connolly. There was an audition later that day for a sports show. I told CBS that Charlie was in the shower and he'd have to call back. But just before I hung up, the caller wondered what I was doing later that afternoon. Well, Well, Charlie didn't get the job, and I found a second career. What you've seen in the last hour is the work of thousands and thousands of extraordinarily dedicated men and women. Those of us in front of the camera, and this can never be overstated, are but a small piece of what is always a collaborative effort. HBO Sports thanks ABC, NBC, and CBS for their untiring cooperation in this project. And now for Jim McKay, Kurt Gowdy, Bob Costas, Jim Lampley, and Brent Musburger, I'm Pat Summerall. Join us soon for Game 2, play-by-play, a history of sports television.
This is Mel Allen saying thank you and good night from Milwaukee.
There's a long try. That one is going way up. It is off the roof.
27-yard kick. Here it is. It's good.
Bill Mills fights his way through, and he wins it, breaking the Olympic record.
That winds it up, ladies and gentlemen, from Denver. Bud Palmer, thanks so long. Thanks for watching.
What a performance. Peggy Fleming.
Jim Kano leading the race. Ryan.
Oh, he fell down. Jim Ryan's down the track. His effort may be over.
Tagging is Harold Crowley Gamble. He's coming. Here's the throw. And he is
And fans, we'll see you on the Falstaff Game of the Week. So long, everybody.
So long, everybody.
Stay way back. Here comes the rush. He sidesteps. Can he throw? He can't. The ball flipped over his nose. A wild scramble. The Oakland Raiders have scored on the most absolutely impossible dream of a play. He's
They're out of it. Now this Red Barb is saying, I hope you have a good time.
1 second on the clock.
Mark Spitz has 7 gold medals. He's won everything that he had hoped to win.
There's Rogers at the outside, pitching back to Gardner. Gardner's got no place to go and no one to pitch it to, and he's still in his feet. Game's not over yet. And here's another man. Flag is down. A flag is down. Kevin Boone takes it into the end zone. We have chaos.
I hope you'll be with us next Sunday night along about this same time when we try to bring some more stars into your home, sports stars of every kind of sport. And if you enjoyed it tonight, I think you will be. Anyways, along about this same time, if you'll be there, we'll be here, and we'll see you all over again. Until then, this is Bill Stern saying good night.
This has been a presentation of HBO Sports, the network of champions.